Top of the flops. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Uh-oh, I no longer seek you.
Ranting like old men about the youth of today.
And fabulous failures.
All this and more coming up on this week's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello, Dave. We are on episode 176. Is that right?
176.
And thank you to everyone who has been with us, whether it's for a short while or the whole time, or more recently, we have a listener who joined us recently but binged all 175 episodes before this, didn't we?
Yes. So thank you, Tapeworm.
Thank you, Tapeworm. Are you not sick of us yet? I've had a good week, Dave. Another 7-day week here, but a very happy one and still refreshed after the holiday that came before it. We had a really great private booking at the Cave yesterday with Immortal Joysticks. And you know all about this because I backed a joystick to support the Kickstarter, but you backed how many?
I backed 10.
You backed 10 joysticks. And, well, there's no doubt in my mind that that was a big part of helping to push it over the line. You and other people who backed what was the pack called? Was it a retail pack or something like that?
It was Stock Your Shop or something.
Stock Your Shop.
It was sitting, the Kickstarter was sitting at a point where it didn't look as if it might not make it, but backing 10 would have put it to the point where it was kind of inevitable. So I thought, well, I'll do that. Yeah. I'll speak to Neil about it. You agreed that between us we'd somehow pass them on to someone else. And that's what we've done somehow. So where are they, Neil?
Well, just to clarify for a moment, I'm in no way saying that Dave made the Kickstarter a success, but people like Dave did in supporting the project. And they came to the Cave with the plan of putting them in the Cave shop to move them on, keep some for ourselves, and recoup the money, happy that the Kickstarter had been a success. But guess what? I've put Cave branding labels on every single one of them, and there was a beautiful row. I'll get Duncan to put a picture up here. Beautiful row of all the Immortal joysticks on all the systems in the Cave, and it just looks so good.
All the shiny red knobs in a row.
Shiny red knobs, branding. They are solid, these joysticks. Really nice. It's kind of bad in a way because we have memories of creaky, plasticky, janky joysticks that kept breaking in our youth, and that would be the authentic experience.
Well, it's funny you mention that because later on in the show you're going to see that.
Oh, we are we? Oh, yeah. I look forward to that then. And Dave's creaky, janky joystick later on in the show. Stay tuned. And with the Immortal joysticks, they're very solid. But let's be honest, when we had those creaky joysticks, what we really wanted was a true, authentic arcade stick experience. We wanted our joysticks to be like those in the arcades. And we got as close as we could with the budget that we had. So I think on balance, it's nice. It's nice to have decent quality sticks out there. So been doing that. And then just a very small little success story for me. Dave, when you got your V pinball machine, I decided it was my duty to go on a health kick because you've gone quiet about your health kick. I don't know if you've been on it or not.
Yes.
You took a breath. You have. Yes. Good. You're quietly on a health kick.
Small steps in the right direction.
Good. And I put myself on one as well because I'd reached kind of an all-time weight that I'd never got to before in my life. And I thought, well, it's only just going to keep going up if I don't make some changes. And I managed to lose a stone in the last 5 weeks. So I'm really pleased with that. I've still got more.
A lot of weight to lose.
Yeah, but it was obviously there to be lost. And I haven't felt like it's been a struggle. All I did was I installed the NHS app that just keeps a diary and counts calories, basically. That simple. So I've got a way to go, but I'm feeling good about myself. It's nice. And I hope you're feeling good too, Dave, with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I'm making some progress there. I said I would, and I am. It's on hold just now because I'm getting the shed and catty and all the rest done. But yeah, I will get back to that. I've got some stuff bought from it, and I'm really looking forward to playing pinball as best as it possibly can be next to the real machines.
Good. There's one word on the notes here, Dave. Doom Guy. Why?
This week, I've been listening to John Romero's book, Doom Guy. It's really amazing. Listening to it all. I'm about I was halfway through. I'm further ahead now. I'm in the Quake bit where everything kind of falls apart. And it's just amazing. I at times I'm mildly frustrated with him about he's a very US centric view of things. He'll talk about things they've done for the first time like that. Well, hang on, no, that was on the ST, or that was on the Amiga. But it doesn't matter, because if they didn't know about it, then they didn't know about it. It's not as if the internet was really existing in 1990 when they were doing these things. They kind of did a speed run of what British micros were doing, the British micro scene was doing from kind of 1985 to 1990. They did a speed run of all these little games they had, these 2D things. And then they kept pushing the technology forward. As you know, they had Commander Keen, which for everyone not with a PC wasn't that remarkable, but everyone on a PC was remarkable.
That's fair.
And then they had Wolfenstein, and then they had Doom, and then Quake, and each time they were just miles ahead of what was possible. So it is really interesting. John Romero is quite an interesting guy. He talks about meeting a woman, and then he'll say, I met this woman, and then you don't hear anything mentioned about them until I said, yeah, I realised we drifted apart, and that was the end of that. I think he's had 4 wives because of it. And I think the only reason his current relationship worked is because his wife, Brenda, is a renowned developer herself. And I think that's why, because he's an absolute addict to the crunch.
Yeah. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing them both together once, and they're very well suited. And Brenda, obviously, and John, very understanding of each other's chosen career path, their hobbies. She was talking about how he would pack up a computer in a suitcase and take it on holiday with them. And his idea of a holiday was 2 weeks of coding in the Sun Lounger and experimenting and seeing what he could come up with, rather than, other normal holiday things. Yeah,
I'm really enjoying that, though.
If you'd like any other relationship insights from any other celebrities, just comment on the subreddit, reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro.
We take instant messaging for granted now. It took me a few seconds to unpeel the layers of memory back to a time when we did not. There's 2 things that arrived roughly at the same time for me. One was SMS text messaging on my mobile phone. Not sure what it's called elsewhere. Is it called text messages elsewhere? SMS?
Cellular messaging? I don't know. Because you had pagers as well before that, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I didn't, but yeah, people did. But for me, SMS text messages with a clunky big Nokia phone and Mirabilis' software ICQ.
And you got to say it like that, haven't you? I seek you.
Yes. ICQ, ICQ, ICQ. SMS was only good in your own country, really, and even then you paid for it if you used more than the modest allocation of maybe 50 messages. So it was great to send a message, that's me on the train, where are you, I'm waiting for you, but you wouldn't have a conversation by text without costing you a fortune. And more importantly, it meant giving out your mobile phone number, and we didn't want to give out a mobile phone number. So before ICQ, as far as I'm concerned, the only was IRC before that. And IRC meant being on the same network, and you had to log in and stay online. It just wasn't as good.
Oh, hang on, Dave. There was NetSend.
Not for me, there wasn't.
NetSend star. The teacher's name sucks. Just to flood the whole network.
Oh, that thing. Yeah, that thing. Yeah, yeah. Not quite the same, though. For me, when I was playing MUDs, so multi-user dungeons, I was incredibly addicted, 16 hours a day, every single day, unless I was out drinking, and I might have been addicted to doing that as well. But ICQ came out when that happened, and it was a revelation, because MUDs, especially PvP, player versus player MUDs, did not want you communicating outside the game. They didn't want you talking to the other side either. And it was thought of as cheating if you were collaborating with players outside the game. And since so few people did it, prior to ICQ at least, wizards used to snoop on players to find out if they were doing anything dodgy. And with ICQ around, it wasn't so possible. But it did mean, for my online gaming, instant messaging was a revelation in terms of collaboration with other people. Can you log in and do this? Asking questions outside the game.
Did you ever think to combine the drinking and the mud and be like a drunken dwarf down in the dungeons there, Dave?
No, but I do remember coming home drunk and playing Mud's fine. I seem to be able to do things.
Not recommended.
No, don't mud while drinking. ICQ, though, marked a small step from the internet where everyone was anonymous, where your IP should be hidden and protected, and where your identities were sort of disposable. You could go somewhere, say what you liked, and then disappear, and that was perhaps why people were more hostile. It marked a small step towards where we are now, where your real name and who you are and what you look like is difficult to hide. And for most people, that kind of veil has been pierced. Anyone's online username, if you've got any time at all, you could search and find out who they are, what they look like, find their photos and all the rest of it. But back then, you couldn't. My ICQ number was 573472, I think. But it was hacked and stolen around 1999, and actually I was okay with that, and I will tell you at the end of the story why I was not unhappy for it. But now, though, ICQ has been demised. It's the end, but the reality is most people stopped using it, and it was only used within organisations, I think. Things like MSN Messenger took over, and we now have loads of ways of DMing. Most common for me now is Discord, which ironically is modern IRC, I think. Neil, did you ICQ?
I did. I'm just doing a quick search for ICQ directories, seeing if I can look up your old number. But every one of the websites is just dead. It's just not working anymore. So I can't look you up, Dave. Yeah. So this whole story got me thinking about what services I used and in what order I used them. IRC, you mentioned, Internet Relay Chat, that came out in 1988. So that was well before we were mainstream on the internet. I did use that as soon as I got dial-up internet connections, and that would have been in the mid-90s. Obviously, before that, there were BBSs, but that was more of a forum-type system. I didn't use BBSs an awful lot. I would sort of go on. I was what you would probably term a leech. I would go on. I would take that wares. And then I would go away. I didn't really engage a lot on BBSs because here in the UK, we paid by the minute. Time was money. Get on, get what you need, get off. And I know you could download the messages and read them offline, but I never really got into all of that. Anyway, slightly different. It's not instant messaging. Then we had ICQ. That came in 96. We had AIM. That was AOL's messenger in 97. Didn't really use that. We had AOL in the UK. We had the billions of free CDs came through our doors. I think generally most of us, we might have used the free time and then binned it off and moved on to the next thing. We had Yahoo Messenger in 98. I did use that quite a bit, as well as Yahoo chat rooms back when they were new. I used to just sort of hang out in there and chat to people because I think they had regional chat rooms. So you could speak to other nerds in your area.
Could you speak to people in your accent? Oh, hello there.
No, it was text only, Dave. That was an awful accent. Hello there, got any cows for sale? MSN Messenger, that came in 1999. And then by 2000, Trillion came out, and I was using that, which was just an app that let you put all your messenger services into one app. Sometimes it was a bit janky, but that mostly worked. But yeah, before broadband, I was always mindful of these services and how it affected online gaming, because I was doing a lot of online gaming on dial-up, and every byte counted. You didn't want to add lag, so you would close things down and just focus on your game. Voice chat was largely out of the question. ICQ had closed down. I don't think ICQ did voice chat, did it? I think it was.
Don't think so.
No, it was just
certainly not in its heyday.
Not in its, I guess, original form. I don't remember that existing.
Maybe they added it.
Yeah. But ICQ, it was a social thing. I fired it up for a bit of social chit chat, closed it and played games. And that was nice. And the thing I remember most about it was, in my mind, it was an open directory. There was no privacy aside from what details you decided to hold back. So all the fields were there. You didn't have to fill them out, but they were there. So for example, you could search for all of the people in Dundee who are online right now, and it would come up with a list, and you could if they'd put in their details, you would get first name, last name, where they are, all the rest of it. Now, back then, I was sensible enough not to put my full name in. Did you, Dave? Did you put all the details in?
I put none of the details in.
None of the details.
Absolutely none.
You could be anonymous, and that was fine. But you could search, and then you could just pick a name off of the results, and you could say hello. And I remember that is exactly what I did when I moved to university in Bournemouth. Loaded up ICQ, stuck in Bournemouth. Who's online now? Around about my age, because they're probably in the same boat as me. Got chatting to a few people. Before we know it, we were having some beers, friendships formed. And that was that. Much, much more innocent times on the internet. Nobody died in the process. But yeah, I mean, that is a real reflection of the more innocent times of the internet and the more trusting times and the trust that came with us from an offline world into an online world before it was all kind of broken by the online world that we know today. There was that really nice middle ground. Not saying it wasn't dangerous, not saying there weren't nutters out there, but it just kind of worked. As for the last time I used ICQ, probably 2002, 2003. It was decades ago. I haven't thought about it until it started appearing in the news recently for this story of the services closing. I'll be honest, I assumed it had died a long time ago until I started hearing the stories. I think it was bought out by a Russian company. Is that right?
It was Israeli at one point. Did it go Russian?
Okay. I don't know. It might have been Israeli. Anyway, I just remember thinking it was a country that I wouldn't want to give all my details to now under any circumstances. And who knows whether it was popular in other regions that we just don't know about or not. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe a listener can tell us if ICQ had a corner of the world where it was primarily used. But those are my memories. And on the whole, they're good memories.
Yeah. Well, thanks to the real Mr. Buzzy for submitting this. ICQ will close on the 26th of June. I do miss my time in ICQ, but I miss the time in the late 90s in ICQ. I wouldn't want to go back to it now. I just miss the muds that I was playing then, the fun that I had. And I said I'd tell you why I wasn't annoyed that mine was hacked. Well, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to vanish. I had stopped logging into ICQ because I couldn't quit muds properly other than just stop logging in one day and disappear from the face of the earth, from anyone I played with, and not using ICQ was how to do that.
Did you have a mud name? Dave the Mysterious, or what was your
I did, but I'm not going to say it.
Oh, that's a shame.
I had several, in fact. I would change usernames when I wanted to start again. I was horribly, horribly, horribly addicted. I was absolutely sucked into these things, and it got to the point where my entire life was poured into it, and I said, I have to stop. And I couldn't just say, okay, I'll only log in for 6 hours today instead of 16. I couldn't do that, so it was absolutely went cold. And that's why when I stopped logging into ICQ and some Russian or Turkish hacker stole my ICQ, I didn't want it back. I was quite happy for it to disappear.
Maybe they took on your character. Maybe your character lives on.
I won't even play any online games like that anymore because I know I'll get sucked in. I wouldn't mind playing something like, I don't know, Cooperative Quake or something like that, but a massively online game, I wouldn't do it. I don't think you would either, Neil, either.
No, we've spoken about this in the past. My experience is based on Ultima Online. Ping, there's an Ultima mention. I know I get sucked in. I know I get addicted. I know I can be addicted to everything from driving games to massively multiplayer online games, but I recognize that, and I know not to go there.
Also, to get the best out of them, you do need to be putting in the kind of hours you only have as a teenager or in your early 20s.
Yeah, true. And we'll be talking about that a bit more later.
We are sponsored by Pixel Addict Magazine. Thank you very much, Pixel Addict Magazine. There is a new issue out. It's maybe my favourite cover, not from a graphical art perspective in terms of what they've created, but just because of what's on it. It is a black cover with the Elite logo on it. Elite as in the space trading combat game from 40 years ago on it. If you're watching the show, you can see it. If you're listening to the podcast, you'll have to imagine that wonderful logo. It's one of my favourite games, one of the most important games ever made, one of the most technically advanced games ever made, an absolute feat doing it. When we finish recording, I'm going to sit down and spend an hour or two reading the magazine. They've got an interview with various elite people, including himself, Ian Bell, and even Magic Carpet is in this issue too, a game that nobody talks about now. Neil, Elite, any good, you think?
Well, I don't need to say too much about Elite because everyone knows it's fantastic. Yeah, it's great. What can you say about Elite? Everyone knows Elite is fantastic, but I'm sure that Pixel Addict have found some new perspectives and have got some really interesting questions. I was talking to Ian, Pixels at Dawn, who is he's the editor now, actually, I think for either Pixel Addict or Amiga Addict, one of the two. And he was talking about an interview that he's done recently, and he actually spent a year from getting the interview to being happy with the questions he'd got to ask at the interview. He took that long deliberating over what questions to ask. And when you put that much thought and effort into them, you know you're going to get new and original content and interesting answers.
Was it with someone from Revolution Software?
No.
Because I know he did get involved with it, but he filled in an episode of Amigos, Everything Amiga. And that was the first time I've heard him in a podcast, and he did really, really well. But it was obvious that unlike Boat and Aaron, who have to do at least one podcast a week, sometimes more, Pixels at Dawn has spent an enormous amount of time researching things because he was so incredibly well informed about it.
Yeah. Well, that's how we tackle things. If you're nervous, I mean, I'll be honest. When I first started getting asked to go on podcasts as a guest, I would do an enormous amount of research because I was so nervous about the experience. Pixels, he likes to be informed. And actually, I think he's quite natural on podcasts. He entered the Amigos, we're going way off topic here. He entered the Amigos podcast competition recently. And did you hear his entry? He did a podcast on the mysterious cities of gold.
No, I've got it saved in my podcast app to listen to. I forgot. I got a Boat to give me a link so I could get all the entries to listen to.
Yeah.
I added it to a podcast app and then forgot about them until now.
Oh, it was good. Pajako did a podcast as well in there. There's some good ones in there. Anyway, Pixel Addict, I think we were talking about. They support us. We support them. Thank you, Pixel Addict. £6.99, issue 21, out in shops now. Go and treat yourself.
Pixel.addict.media.
Oh, that's important too, yeah.
Pixel.addict.media.
This week, Dave, I've chosen a post on the subreddit from a father, because it was Father's Day last weekend, sharing his opinion on the youth of today. Yeah, we're going to turn into old moany men. The youth of today and modern gaming, because I thought it would be a nice way to reflect on our own behaviours back in the day. So what I'm going to do is just read the post in its entirety, and then we'll go from there. So this was posted by Battle Pratt, and he says, my spotty son, now 16, and his brother, 10, soon to be spotty, cannot be torn away from their PCs/consoles. Anything else is meh on steroids. It got me thinking. When I was both the proud owner of a ZX Plus 2 and an unashamedly vast collection of tape-traded games back in the 80s, my attention was always split between other interests. I was a keen BMXer, a tree climber, a Knight Rider fan, fish catcher, I think you call them fishermen, and Radio 1 Top 40 frequenter. I wonder if that was Bruno Brooks or who that would have been back then.
Is he the only one you can mention?
Yeah, probably. We would not even think twice about trying to complete Pajama-rama when the sun was shining with the curtains drawn. When outside there were jump ramps to be made from piles of bricks and an old door. The gaming, which wasn't, to the best of my memory, a phrase back then, kind of fitted in around those other activities. Sometimes, but not always, weather permitting. Now it's just Fortnite, Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, and most parents I talk to at the school gates say the same. I think the problem is the online aspect of today's modern games. I cannot describe the anxiety and stress that my kids display if they're punished with some game time ban for one reason or another. The FOMO, fear of missing out, is seemingly all-encompassing, as it is the predominant way that kids, or mine at least, communicate with each other. Rant over, escape. So that's Battle Pratt. That's an insight into his children. I mean, it would be good at this point to have Chris's input as a parent, because you and I aren't, but I'm sure the other listeners have listened to that and will be keen to reflect on their own experiences. And I think we can weave this into our question of the week. So just get thinking about that. As an aside, can I share my little bit of parent news, Dave?
Yes, you can. I was going to ask you about the start, but I realised that you had to talk about it at this point.
Yeah. So as many of you know, we're in the process of adopting. We're about 18 months into the process now.
Sorry to interrupt. When Neil says we, he doesn't mean me.
Me and Dave, we're adopting. No. I chose on this occasion. I chose to adopt with my wife, but maybe next time, Dave. And we finally got a date. So mid-August, we have a confirmed date when the child we've matched with will come to our house and never leave. So that's really, really exciting news. It will mean that there will be a slight hiatus from me on the show for 4 to 6 weeks. Depends how things go with the transition. But I think Dave's got that covered. So the show won't just cease. There will be episodes, and I might be able to squeeze in a few little 5-minute segments just to, keep my hand in there, so I'm not forgotten about completely. But anyway, good news. So I'll be able to reflect on this kind of question in the coming years. But it did also get me thinking about my own childhood. Now, I grew up on a 70s housing estate with at one end of the estate, there were the posher bungalows, which all the old people lived in. In the middle of the estate, it was like a crescent. So you came down the hill, and in the middle of the estate, there were, I guess, sort of the bog standard houses in the middle, and that's where I lived. And then as you got to the other end of the estate, there were much more densely packed council housing at the other end. Now, I should stress this was Dorset. This was not the inner city on the whole. It was very clean, and it was very safe for us to roam around as kids. And that's exactly what we did. The estate had a perimeter of about 1.5 miles all the way around. And in the middle was just a huge rabbit warren of alleyways and trees and bushes to hide in and all sorts. And there were so many kids on that estate that if we played something like Manhunt, then the whole estate was used. It was just phenomenal. Great memories from that time. We had a guy in our town called Mark Noble. He became the BMX world champion. And he used to just come down to our estate, make us lie on the floor, rode as fast as he could, and jumped over as many children as he could without killing them. That was fun. And then when he did become world champion, he came back, built us a half pipe and a BMX dirt track on the estate. So inspired by him and just the general time, the general feeling BMXing, it was massive for us as kids, and we'd be out on them all day. And what Battle Pratt writes does ring really true with me. I gamed a lot. He said the phrase gaming wasn't used back then. Not sure.
What did we didn't call it gaming. Gaming is a relatively new term, I think.
Yes, I'm going to play some games. I'm going to play some video games.
Play my computer. That was my computer.
Yeah, I'm going to play on my computer. That was it. Yeah. So I played on my computer a lot, and I remember doing everything else a lot too. I loved a rainy day, and I would play video games, but I'd also dig out board games, and I'd read a lot because of that disconnected nature. It was possible to get a bit bored with a computer game, and if you did, I mean, you could change games, but generally, if you did, that was that. You didn't press Alt-Tab and chat on Discord or go onto some social media. You just switched off, and you went and did something else. And it's the always-on nature of everything that must really shape young people's habits now. Even if they do go out on a BMX, there's still a computer in their pocket pinging away. There's no call of come home when the streetlights turn on from your parents, because you're never really out of touch with them. Are kids missing out by not being switched off, Dave?
The first thing I did when I knew this question to answer was typed it into Google. And there are pages and pages of articles written for concerned parents with a peril-clutching aspect to them.
Have you been on Mumsnet?
No, thankfully, I'm not daft enough to go there. I'm reminded a bit of the BBC videos we covered a couple of months ago where they were concerned about the impact of video games on kids. The one from the 80s where it was kind of mild concern, look at this weirdo who spends all their time in it. And the one from the 90s, this is terrible. I'm reminded of the satanic panic from Christians in the USA. I'm reminded of seemingly every generation criticising the generations below. So I think we have to bear that in mind. When I got my CPC, I wasn't as interested in going out to play. I was 10 years old when I got my CPC, I think. So I had been out playing in the streets on my BMX and all the rest of it for years.
But you were mostly drinking beer and playing muds.
Not at that age, thankfully.
Just tell us, Dave, about where you grew up. Did you grow up on a similar estate to me, or where did you grow up?
Yes, I grew up in a town, a large town, and it was an estate. We were in a cul-de-sac, but it was a large estate. There was a school not too far from us. There was loads of kids to play with, and the two streets that kind of joined together, it was all families with kids of a certain age. So there were a good dozen or 20 nearby kids that we played with.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I live in a cul-de-sac now, and there are very few children. It's mostly retired people and one of those great big, what do you call them? Great big mobile holiday vans.
Optimus Prime.
You know, what do you call them?
Tripods.
Camper vans. Great big camper vans on every driveway except for mine.
But got you.
Yeah, and I think, bringing up a kid here, they're not going to have the same just population of children to muck around with. Yeah.
I did still go out once I got the CPC. We're out in our rally burners. We explore the nearby woods. We'd be at youth club in the summers, loads of stuff. But I did spend a lot more time indoors once I got the CPC. And we did go to other people's houses to play games together.
True.
Whereas we do it on the internet now. So I do worry about the always online nature of it. I mean, I worry about the effects of propaganda and advertising and so on in kids because they're wide open to it. They're really susceptible. And about social media and bullying and being always online. I think there's good arguments there about it. But fundamentally, spending time in games, let kids do it. Let kids explore new worlds. Let kids read stories they've not seen before. Let kids do things like that. Really, it was such an important thing for me. I got so much enjoyment out of it. I wouldn't want to take it away from other kids. I wonder though, is Roblox and Minecraft, does it count the same way? It probably does. They must be making up their own stories in there.
And also keep in mind, when we were playing games on our Amstrad, there was no game that you played for 10 years, for example, for the length of time that Minecraft has been updated and available and current. Those games didn't become a social hub where we talk to our friends. And that's no bad thing, but we did have a lot of variety in our gaming. I
don't think, when I think back to between, say, the ages of 10 and 15, the post was a 16-year-old? Yeah, 16-year-old and a 10-year-old. Let's say between the age of 10 and 18, I didn't play a game for longer than a year. And I certainly didn't play a game exclusively for longer than a couple of months. Elite, that we mentioned earlier on, maybe I sunk 3 months into that and played very little else. But no other game did I play the way that kids now play Fortnite and Roblox and so on, where that's the only thing they play.
I've never played Roblox.
I think it's like Minecraft. I don't know.
We're so informed.
I don't know.
Where's Pixels at Dawn when you need some well-researched content?
Do you not feel, though, that you mentioned that old man shouting at cloud? Do you not listen to ourselves and think, oh, yes, I know how this sounds, we must be wrong?
I hear the words coming out of my mouth and I think, just stop. You're turning into a grumpy old man. But I think there are some realistic concerns in there. And in my current situation, I am starting to think ahead. Like, how do I control access to the internet? Do I control it? What do I block? What don't I block? How do I manage screen time? And I'm sure some of our parents were having these same thoughts back in the day. Back in the 80s, they would have been thinking about screen time, even if they didn't use that phrase.
Yeah. But did we say this is going to be the question of the week, Neil?
Yes, yeah.
I want to hear positive. I want to hear from parents positive stuff about their kids and games. Okay. I want to hear what's good about it, what you're pleased about, what good it's done for your kid, because there's far too much focus on the negative things.
There is. Okay, well, get thinking, everyone. We'll come to the question of the week at the end of the show. And get thinking about your memories and for yourself and also your current experiences with your children.
It's correction time. There was no World Cup in 1980. Neil said there was, and he asked me, and I agreed with him and said there was. I double-checked, and Czechoslovakia won it in 1980. But that was the football in the 1980 Olympics in Russia, so it doesn't really count. Yeah, Spain 82 is what we're thinking about, because it wouldn't be Argentina 78.
Mexico 86, Hand of God year. That was that one.
Yeah, the Mexico 86 one is the one that I have any real memories of. Spain, I remember a little bit because of being in Spain on holiday, I think, and getting sweeties.
Yeah. Mexico 86 is the first I remember, because I just remember Hand of God, Dad screaming at the television, nose basically on the glass, shouting at the referee.
It was perfectly legitimate.
Yeah, move on. Well, hang on, what was the score, Dave? What was the score for Scotland?
I don't know. England lost. That's fine. We're still qualified. Still, okay. I think it's
5-1, isn't it? Moving on.
I've been avoiding doing updates on the Mr. D10 clone because I didn't want to just come out with crumbs every week until it arrived. It is still progressing, and I felt this update was important enough to share. Taki has said it won't be $99, it will be less. So I still don't really believe this is real until people have them in their hands. It just has that air of too good to be true, but there's not any justification for that at all. Everything about it seems legitimate. He seems to know what he's doing. He's done something like this before. It's all fine and above board as far as I can tell. It's just such an amazing thing. If we can get, I don't know, by the time VAT is added in the UK, if we can get in our hands £100 for the DE10 to plug it into something else to get the Mister for less money, then it will be amazing.
Yeah, I don't think there are any concerns that it's vaporware. And I think it's just understood that it's going for a low price point. Now, I don't particularly care what that price point, whether it's $99, $79, $110, $120, that's fine. It's still a massive saving on the alternative. So fine, crack on, get it out. There was a post where he announced that it was going to be called Mr. Pie, which was a bit confusing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and logic is that lots of things are called Pi now because of the form factor, but no, for our community, Pi means a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
So if you call it a Mr. Pi, then you're thinking, oh, is this like Mr. but it's running on a Pi?
Yeah, so we'll see if that changes or not in time, but that's a very small, minor point compared to what he's achieved, and I can't wait to see it come out. I've talked in the past about taking a console to CEX to test out their repair service. Well, it seems Retro Dodo has done just that. He put out a YouTube short where he took a damaged Game Boy with corrosion on it, wouldn't turn on, and it had a damaged screen. Took it in for the quoted £39.99 price for a repair. CX don't do it themselves. They offload it onto someone else who fixes it, and then it comes back. But you do it. Your drop-off point and your collection point will be in the store. I don't know if they offer a postal service or you have to drop it in store. But anyway, CX is a front for it. And it turns out it came back repaired for that price. No additional cost. Now, that is just one example. It's still worth testing it out and looking for more examples. But that is a very positive outcome, so we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't get it done for $39.99 anywhere else. Replacement battery cover, fix the screen. They even replaced buttons that he didn't ask to be replaced because it needed done. So, amazing.
Could it be that they are going for a period of above and beyond to establish a reputation?
Yeah. Before, well, they had the option of turning around and says, sorry, this is not economical to fix, or we can't fix it for the price, and giving it back and charging nothing. So they chose to.
It would be interesting to know if any serial numbers or anything were taken to just see is it the repaired thing, or did they just have a bucket of Game Boy guts and they just swapped it out?
Who knows? A popular submission, one that humbled me, is this from Beefoot. He says, long-time listener, first-time poster, I filers about time. Last year, at the ripe age of 40, I completed my first marathon. Leading up to that, I was getting heavily into the retro scene and finding all sorts of great YouTube channels and podcasts, one particularly good one being RMC, which led me to This Week in Retro. I started listening to the back catalogue from episode 1 with John and found the topics and conversations perfect for long, multi-hour training runs. I got so used to zoning out with Twir, I even had an episode playing during the marathon. I've now listened, watched, I now consume it via YouTube, to every episode to date, and as a fellow Aussie, I do miss Chris. So thank you guys for helping me to run a marathon. Dave, in brackets, Beefoot.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, first of all, well done, Dave, on your achievement. I have run many, many half marathons, never a full marathon, and a half marathon is an absolute killer. So to be able to do a full marathon takes a huge amount of effort and training. You don't just get out of bed one day and say, I'm going to run a marathon today. It takes months and months of work. So well done. And you're not over the hill, mate. You've done it at 40. Keep it up. Keep it up. And thank you for the kind words as well. It's really interesting to get insights into how we feature in people's worlds, isn't it? How we our voices wafting around the world, helping people in different ways.
I never really feel this is real, that more than a dozen people are listening to this. And then you look at the numbers, it's over 10,000 a week, and you see messages, and it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just me chatting to you, Dave.
Yeah,
you chatting to me.
I know. Rubbish. I want to welcome our newest patron, Ben. Thank you very much for signing up on patreon.com.
Thank you, Ben.
To be a patron. Anyone else who wants to join Ben would be more than welcome to join there and help us on our way.
Yeah, at patreon.com/This Week in Retro.
Briefs, Neil. Briefs.
News in brief. So I'll start. These are the stories submitted to our subreddit, which is where all of our stories come from. We really do encourage you to submit any interesting news stories you see, or just conversation pieces, as we spoke about earlier with parenting children. If you've got something you want to share, go to reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro, and you can submit it. You can take part in the question of the week, and you can find the latest show. These are the stories now in brief that we're not covering in detail. From How Was It Done? There's a no-clip doco, mate, on the Wipeout 2097 soundtrack. It features the amazing music of Left Field Orbital Prodigy. Why can't I say that today? Prodigy.
Comp yourself.
Prodigy. It's the soundtrack is a who's of 90s techno music. Yeah, fantastic.
From Intrepid Ad 7300, a shop that used to sell Amigas in Valletta, I'm assuming that's in Valletta in Malta, still has the old sign. You can see the faded lettering on the sign if you go to Malta. So there's a reason to go to Malta if you're an Amiga fan.
Amiga hasn't died, see? It's on the sign. It's on a sign. A submission titled Gameplay in the Before Time, and it's a picture of the fantastic Castle Master and a hand-drawn map from Stan Stair. So I love finding things tucked away in game boxes, and here we've got an example of someone who's painstakingly drawn a map of their experience of playing the game.
We're getting clickbait in the subreddit now, Neil.
Are we?
The unpredictable ETO says Game are selling the Atari A500 Mini.
What?
But really, it's just a listing error on their site. Lord Borak replied with a comment saying, I'm off to stick Bugatti badges on a VW, obviously implying that you can't make an Amiga great just by sticking an Atari name on it.
Soggy Fennel says, dust off your GameCube bongos because a madman has taken the Donkey Konga bongo peripheral.
Donkey Konga?
It is, yeah, Donkey Konga. I think there were 3 Donkey Konga games, and turned it into a standalone device so you can play on the move without your GameCube. If only bongos were actually portable, Dave.
This is a Guitar Hero style game, if anyone's baffled by it. Superfly tells us, Woman smuggles Switch games in her bra. So she was attempting to smuggle 350 Nintendo Switch game cartridges into mainland China in her bra. But guess what, Neil?
Go on.
She got busted.
Hey. A Switch game cartridge is just an SD card, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that's still a lot of SD cards to try and get
Yeah.
into your bra. 350. Yeah. Wow. Should have tried to smuggle some Donkey Konga bonkers.
There are loads more stories. We're not going to cover that any this week because we're running short on time. There's loads more stories in subreddit. Have a browse when you're bored and see what you can find. Or submit some. I've got a soft spot for micros and consoles that came in third place or in fourth place, just as long as they could have been a contender. I know, Neil, that you do too. You've done loads of videos and platforms that didn't quite make it. My favourite, of course, is the Amstrad GX4000.
What a machine.
I know, it's what Amstrad went on to after their CPC range. I loved my CPC as a kid. In fact, Neil, you loved yours too. I had the wonderful 6128 with a built-in disk drive, and I think that's the one you had too, Neil.
No, I had the 464 with the tape drive. You cassette tape. You know this full well, Dave.
Today's article is from Den of Geek, submitted by Squelch411. It's titled, The Best Games for Failed Consoles. Now, I'm not a huge console fan, but this is something that interests me, and I've actually got some experience with some of these games, which surprised me. So, who better for me to put on the spot than the owner of a museum who has most, if not all, of these consoles? It's Mastermind time. Your name?
Neil Thomas.
Your occupation?
Museum owner.
And your specialist subject?
Great games for obscure platforms.
The first is Ms. Pac-Man for the Atari 5200. The 5200 in 1983. Not much to say here, really. Pac-Man isn't a compelling reason to get a platform, I don't think, but they had a good port on this.
Yeah, it was the same for the 2600, though. Pac-Man was awful, flickery mess. Ms. Pac-Man was great. Is the 5200 version the same, or are there any enhancements over the 2600? I'm supposed to be that's supposed to be my specialist subject, isn't it? Well, I should know.
Flicky for the SG-1000 in 1985. So this is Sega's competitor to the Nintendo Entertainment System, and while it's more powerful than the 2600, it's not a patch in the NES. Supposedly this is unofficially the first Sonic. Any ideas, Neil?
I have an SG-1000. It's on loan. I haven't plugged it in, so I couldn't tell you, but I don't have Flicky for it.
Okay.
I might be able to play it on a Master System with a multi-cart, because I know you can play some of those games through the multi-cart. So I'll see if it's on my list. I'm just reading up on the 5200 version of Pac-Man still, and apparently it had some really nice features that the other ones, that the 2600 didn't have, including the intermission screens.
It was a much more powerful console.
Yeah.
Chips challenge for the Atari Lynx. A bit Boulder Dash, a bit Mr. Do, but not really either, Neil.
Loved it. I borrowed a friend's Atari Lynx back in the day with that, and with California Games, and with, is it Blue Lightning? Blue Lightning, I think, the playing game. And Chips Challenge was the game I got completely hooked on, more so than I ever did with Tetris. I thought it was the perfect handheld game. Chips Challenge is great.
Tetris is next. Tetris on the Philips CDI from 1992. If all you've got to sell your platform is Tetris, then your platform has failed. You can get Tetris on anything. Neil, what's a better reason to buy the CDI?
Well, I mean, I put Tetris on the CDI because it's a real struggle to get people to sit down and play on the CDI in the museum. And I think, well, Tetris is something they recognize. It just gives you some nice backgrounds on this version of Tetris. But what I've been doing more recently is just putting in a copy of Top Gun and letting a movie play. It's because nobody ever plays the damn thing. So why not?
Next is Road Rash for the 3DO. Now, this is much more to my liking. I played the one on the PC. It's a nice motorbike racer where you can kick and punch your opponents. It doesn't lean too heavily into that side of thing. It gets the balance right. It's a shame about the awful music, though. I want rave and techno on my racing games.
It's got a really nice presentation, that whole game. The cartoon character-like cut screens, rather than in Need for Speed, which is also great on the 3DO, but that goes for sort of a more FMV style thing. Yeah, Road Rash is a good game, but my pick for the 3DO is always Alone in the Dark. I love that, and it plays really well on the console.
Alien versus Predator for the Atari Jaguar 1994. I've got an even better expert than you in.
Oh, go on then.
That's actually a really good question, Dave. And for me, well, the Atari Jaguar, Alien vs. Predator as one of the launch titles, and in fact, the game that I purchased along with my Jaguar because knowledge of it coming out had made me want a Jaguar. It was probably the main game at launch that made me want that system. And, being a huge fan of Aliens and also Predator, both franchises, being aware of the Alien vs. Predator crossover in the comic books, and just the ability. I mean, when I played Doom, I was playing Aliens in my head, right? And obviously Aliens was part of the inspiration for Doom. And so to actually have a licensed title, and I think I'm right in saying it was 1994, it was the first-person shooter for either franchise, but of course it was the two combined. Fantastic. Not the first game, the first-person shooter. And you got to play not only as the Marine taking on aliens and predators, but as an alien or as a predator. So, yes, it was kind of rehashing because you essentially play the same game 3 times, but you play the same game 3 times. It was like 3 games in one. And each character was distinctly different. And you also got an individual overlay, 3 different overlays for the control pad for the Jaguar. So because they each had individual controls, they had individual abilities. For me, though, it was the ability to become the Predator, to turn on that cloaking device, sneak up on things, either give them a close range stab with the wrist blades, or a long range stab with the jabby javelin thing, spear, whatever you want to call it, or to take them from a distance with it was the shoulder cannon. You had the shoulder cannon, and you also had the let's call it a saw blade disc. I don't know what it's called, but you throw it out and I think that was in that game anyway. And then so that's 1994. You had to wait, was it 96? You had Aliens Trilogy on the PlayStation 1. So that's another couple of years to wait for that. And then 1999 for the first-person shooter Alien vs. Predator on the PC, which again was a fantastic game. But so that was a Jaguar console exclusive, and it remained as such. And it's a fantastic game. If you've not played it and you got a Jaguar, you have to play Alien vs. Predator. Actually, no, don't, because it's got too expensive, and I still need to buy a copy. It's rubbish. Don't buy it.
And as we can see there, a row of cheetah or quick shot joysticks there. That's what I was talking about earlier on, Neil. That's what Chris has got set up.
Of course.
Next is Virtua Fighter for the Sega 32X in 1995. Virtua Star Wars is the one that I've heard of. I was actually watching a comparison video of all the Star Wars arcade games yesterday, and that sells the 32X more to me. Always felt this.
Was it called Virtua Star Wars? I thought it was.
No, that was the development name.
That was the dev name. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Because it was based on the same technology. I always felt that Tekken and Virtua Fighter were a step back from 2D fighters. Didn't offer anything really, just the gimmick of 3D.
Technically impressive, but this was still the back end of the Street Fighter 2 era, and the speed and the combos and everything, and didn't quite have the flow that it had there. 32X for me, it's still about the 2D games. I love NBA Jam, WrestleMania, Sonic Chaotix on there. Virtua Fighter, it was in the arcades at the time, so I know why they wanted to get it out there.
Next is Metal Slug for the Neo Geo CD. I've never played any Metal Slug games. I'm sure I will do one day. They look great. I just never got around to it.
Yeah, it's good fun. Metal Slug's good fun. There's quite a few of them in the series. I've been playing a lot on my own Neo Geo, NAM 1975, which also came out on the Neo Geo CD. It was the first game released for the MVS and the AES. So a 1990 game, very early Neo Geo game, but actually it plays fantastically. It's like Cabal, if you've played that. And what I always tell people when they come to the museum and they hold up the box, there's a bit of Sharpie on the box. And they did this on pretty much every box that came into our region. And it's because the Japanese thought a bit of cleavage and a bit of leg was too risque. So every box has a bit of black Sharpie over it. Never mind the killing and everything that's going on.
Carefully remove it with IPA.
Yeah. And it's just on the plastic, so you can pull the sleeve out and see it anyway.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
And there's no Switch games hidden there.
No.
Jack Brothers for Virtual Boy. I've never used a Virtual Boy. I know you've got one. Is this the game to sell it?
I do have this game, and I should, now it's been mentioned, I should probably put a bit more time into this game, but the one I usually fire up is Wario Land, which is really nice. You can sort of jump into the background and the foreground on it. Tetris, sort of a 3D version of Tetris. And Mario Tennis is normally what I put on. Some of the games are quite valuable, so I don't really like to leave them out loose because they're very small things as well. So I tend to just have those out. Maybe I should get a multi-cart for it.
Super Marathon for the Apple Bandai Pippin in 1996. It's an FPS that I've never played on a platform that never appealed to me. Neil?
Oh, another mention of marathons in the show.
Snickers.
Hiding
Switch games in your Snickers.
This week in Snickers. A Super Marathon, from what I can tell, is actually just Marathon 1 and Marathon 2 on a compilation disc for the Pippin. And those two games were just out on the Apple as normal. And I do put those two games out for people to play when they come to the museum, mainly because they were made by Bungie, so it's got that link to Halo. You can tell people that. Everyone knows Halo, so there's a nice little link to a bit of history there. So I wouldn't really call this an exclusive for a failed platform. It's just a compilation.
Tempest 3000 for the new one in 2000. I love Tempest, and I love VCR and DVD players.
Do you?
Neil?
Famous for it, Dave. You're known for your love of DVD players. I played this once at an expo. That's the only chance I got to play it, because it's quite a rare system to come across. It's fine, but I still think the original arcade is perfect and absolutely fine, and it has the advantage of a vector monitor, which really makes Tempest for me.
You've still got one downstairs, haven't you?
We own one, so yeah, that
was good.
Part of the arcade archive.
The spinner on it feels absolutely fantastic.
Lovely.
The new one was a DVD player, not a VCR, a DVD player with loads of extra logic in it, so you could play games on it. It never caught on, but Tempest 3000 was the killer app for it. Next is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the Nokia N-Gage in 2003. I've never played this, never wanted to, never touched an N-Gage. Neil?
I think I played one for about 30 seconds in a mobile phone shop once, and that was it. Should we move on?
Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U in 2014. Now, Mario Kart is a knockoff of the Apogee game from 1994, Wacky Wheels.
Which, of course, is a rip-off of Core's BC Racers, isn't it?
Yes. And the Wii U is a modern device by our standards. This is 11 years younger than anything else on the list. Neil?
Mario Kart. You can't go wrong with Mario Kart.
No, you can't. It's a bit of fun. Banana skins.
Yeah, and it's less of an obscure system than some of the others on the list as well.
I was going to say this could be question of the week, but I think we've got a better question of the week already, Neil. So there you go. There's some obscure or not so obscure things. Yeah.
Is that how you're going to end the story?
Well, I was going to suggest question of the week, and then we did question of the week, and now I don't have an ending for it, and I can't think of anything on the spot.
Time now for our community question of the week. Now, last week we asked you the question. We spoke about Winamp getting a physical version. What virtual thing would you like to become a reality? What do you want to put on your desk? What do you want to drive? What do you want to fly or touch that until now has only been ones and zeros in a computer? Dave, have you taken the answers out of contest mode?
As we are speaking, I am doing it.
Oh,
it's
God,
slammed out.
I can see who's number one. What a surprise. It's 005 Agima. Hello, Chris.
Again.
Hello again, Chris. So he replies with, you thought I'd say I want to put Maria Whittaker on my desk, didn't you? Well, I'd probably said I'd like to ride the hover bike from Skyrunner on my Spectrum or fly the non-existent F-19 stealth fighter from the Amiga. but now I have other things on my mind. I need to be alone now. Chris. Dirty boy. Dave, you're deep in thought there. Are you thinking about Maria as well?
No, I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about the next answer.
Oh, okay.
Happy Coding ZX says lots of people talking about fictional items as opposed to virtual. I think it would be nice to have an actual Pico 8 console if it hasn't been done already.
To which Osprey Shower replies, Pico 8 looks really interesting. Have you tried using /coding it? A physical version would be great. So Pico 8 is a virtual console.
Yeah.
Dave's typing. Are you looking it up?
Yes, I'm looking. Pico. It's a fantasy console. That's the word for it. It's a fantasy console for making, sharing, and playing tiny games and other computer programs. Yeah, I remember this now. So it's kind of like
it uses Lua, doesn't it, as a language?
Yeah, it's a simple thing to develop on that produces things that look simple but are actually really powerful. So it makes it much easier to do something. Whereas back in the old days, in fact, Happy Coding himself has produced a version of Pac-Man on the ZX Spectrum that is as arcade perfect as you could hope to be. And in fact, more than you could actually hope for on the Spectrum. He's had to make lots of optimizations, I'm sure, to make it go fast. You wouldn't need to do that in the Pico 8 because you've got lots of headroom on it.
The Nerdy says, I'd like a real-life functioning and installed flux capacitor. I mean, I guess it counts because there was a video game version of Back to the Future, so we can have that. And Nanky33 says, I'd like all the money I made in GTA, as well as the tank I stole, if I had a place to park it.
The giant chicken from Chucky Egg. Fisket has the best one. The pause button. I want to put the world on pause for a while so I can process and catch up. Imagine hitting the pause button and going and reading all the magazines you want, playing all the games you want, having all the sleep you want, and then unpausing it back to things.
I'm going to give that one an upvote there. I can't believe Chris didn't give us this answer. The car from Outrun, says Jeff Mendoza. Something that looks like a Ferrari Testarossa but doesn't get damaged no matter how hard you crash it.
There's three down the bottom that I like. The BFG, of course, from Doom, the gun from Portal Games, and the Persuadertron from Syndicate.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
3 different answers there.
Yeah. Lots of great answers. I want my own Metal Gear, probably a Ray, as Metal Gear Solid 2 is the one I've played the most, says the Wednesday 1867. Lots of answers. Go and have a read through on our subreddit and enjoy those answers. And that brings us on to our question of the week for this week, which is, are we being grumpy old men when we talk about kids these days, not having a wide enough range of offline hobbies? Are they consumed by a digital world when in our day we switched off BMX simulator and disappeared for the day on a real BMX, coming back when the streetlights came on? As parents, tell us about your kids' gaming habits, how they compare to yours when you were their age. In fact, you don't even have to be a parent. Maybe you're an aunt or an uncle, or you're just a teacher and you know what kids' habits are like these days. Let us know. So that's the question of the week. Head to, where do we go? Reddit.com/r/this week in retro, where you will find the question and pop your answers in there, please.
And a plea from me, try and do positive answers as well. Let's not just be too pearl-clutching negative about it. I want to hear stories about how your kids really enjoy it.
Yeah, negative answers are fine, but positive ones too, please. So it seems like the kind of question where it's going to be more difficult to come up with a positive answer, but we appreciate effort. We always do. Good. I think that about wraps it up for episode 176, unless you've got anything left to say, Dave. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Always got things left to say, but not enough time to say them.
Have we done all of our patron Q&A?
Yes, so we recorded the last one last week. Duncan's not edited it yet. I'm sure he'll be editing it soon. And it will be up, I'm certain, by the time this is broadcast. Episode 3 will be available for patrons. So that's the full set of the initial patron special. And then after that, we'll go on to do something else. We should probably do something before you finish up for your parental leave.
We talked about a system-specific question, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
So we'll come back to that. But,
we'll come back to that. We'll do something before you finish up for parental leave.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for listening. Thank you for being with us this week, and thank you for enduring our our unprofessionalism.
You do the last bit, Dave.
Neil's waving, and I'm waving too. Are you waving? Wave, Taurus, wave. Even if you're on the train, put your hand up and wave. If you're at work, pretending to work and not listening to a podcast, I still want you to wave. Neil's still waving, I'm still waving. Duncan's waving as he's editing this. Goodbye.
I've got a sore arm.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RNC The Cave and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for Out of Date Tech.